So a few days ago, I uploaded a video of my thoughts and impressions about the first season of Mob Psycho 100, and since then, I finally watched and completed the second season, and my general consensus of my opinions about the second season are pretty much exactly like the first season. I like Mob as the main character, I like how the show doesn't take itself super serious, and because of the show doesn't take itself too serious, it likes to subvert a lot of expectations of what you would usually expect in a shonen anime, where the main character fights big bad guy and the main character beats big bad guy, and a lot of really big high octane action. And the thing about that is it decides to go ahead and follow along through with that expectation of what you're expecting in a shonen anime with the second season. But I think for here it works better because of the context of the situation. It worked better in the first season when they did that because they weren't going against the big bad guy of the entire organization and like the super mega big bad boss guy. In the second season, we're definitely, in that scenario where that's, pretty much acceptable. But like I said, my impressions about the second season are pretty much exactly like the first season, except a little bit of things actually changed when I was going into the second season, where I mentioned how in the first half of the first season, it focused a lot on the supernatural slash slice of life elements, and pretty much after that, it kind of delved into a different aspect of the show that was just starting to become its own thing, and it wasn't really anything. It was like more typical of a shonen anime. But in the second season, it decided to go ahead and backtrack a little bit, where it decided to step away from the stuff that it was introducing with the claw organization and who the characters and who they are, and etc etc, and it decides to double down on the supernatural elements and the slice of life elements even further towards the whole, like, more than first half of the second season. I think I actually really appreciated that they did that, especially considering what happens towards the tail end of the season. I think ultimately it kind of helps the season and how it concludes by the end of it, because you're so used to watching the characters and doing the things that they do in a slice of life manner, and all of a sudden the story takes a huge shift towards an entirely different direction than what you were expecting, and you're immediately more invested into what's going on, and you want to keep watching through and through, which is exactly what ended up happening. I watched the first 6 episodes like immediately after I finished watching the first season, and then I took a couple of days away from watching a few episodes because I was like, okay, I've watched like a good chunk of the second season, so I kind of just want to take a break. I came back, I watched a couple episodes that continue on with the slice of life stuff, which is basically Reagan and Mob continuing on with their psychic spirits business, where they're accessing spirits that are haunting people. There's one episode in particular that actually kind of hit me in the feels, where Mob and Reagan are being asked to go to this haunted place and take a picture there for these group of not kids, but group of people who are obviously misfits. And the plot that ends up in the conclusion is that the spirits that lived there in that haunted location was actually a family of spirits, and they try to, Dimple especially, they try to lure out the hateful intent of these spirits to try to give them a reason to, exorcise them and be able to get rid of them, so that way the people who ordered for their picture to be taken there, because some weird suspicious stuff was going around, they were creeped out because a kid showed up in the picture that they took. They tried to bait the spirit, the male spirit, the parent of the child that was in the picture, from the family, and they try to bait it, but then he decides no, that's not what he's gonna do. He just simply wants to be left alone. And it hit me in the feels because it made me realize, like, hey, I think evil spirits, aren't necessarily evil. They just kind of want to be in their own lane, and they just want to do what they want to do. And as long as they're not hurting people, then what's really to say like all spirits are really bad, And in the case for this scenario, and in the topic of the question that we're going on, it was a family of 3, a wife, a father, and a child, where they just simply wanted to be left alone. And it hit me in the feels, I'm not gonna lie. And then the next episode immediately afterwards, there's this like millionaire, billionaire, and like rich guy who lives in the town they live in, and his daughter gets possessed by a spirit, and apparently the spirit used to be a psychic, an Esper user, or whatever you want to call him. And he became a spirit because he absorbed a lot of spirit energy, and he became one himself, and he started just doing whatever the fuck that he wanted, and he became really, really powerful. And it's up to Mob to try to get rid of this guy. But in the episode, they have Mob see a scenario in his life where he never had psychic powers, and he pretty much just, sees the worst outcome of the life that he could have had instead of the life that he has now, where he has a brother who respects him, right? He has a lot of friends. He's a part of a club that supports him in every single way. He has parents who support him in every single way. And it's just an entirely different viewpoint of what Mom's life could have been without his psychic powers. And the whole time, I forget the guy's name. I apologize for not remembering what his name is. But the guy, the spirit, is trying to convince Mob that he should be using Mob's psychic powers as an Esper to reap the benefits of having those powers. And the entire time, Mob is trying to vehemently deny that he should be doing that. And again, like, the first half of the season continues on more with the slice of life and supernatural elements, but it continues on past just the halfway point of the season, and it got to a point where it started becoming its own thing, and I was really enjoying that, and I was really starting to like seeing a lot of these elements for the characters and just seeing them on their day-to-day lives. And there were a lot of moments in the show at this point where they were doing a lot of really hilarious, like, jokes and gags, and I thought it was really good. I thought it was really funny. And then the show clicks, right, where it decides that it wants to go back to where it was before, where it finished off in the last season, where Sho, who was the son of the Claw organization, the leader of the Claw organization, he shows up at his house, kidnaps Ritsu, burns down Mob's house, and presumably kills Mob and Ritsu's mother and father. And immediately fucking Mob goes loose, and he's trying to figure out who the fuck did this shit. And the action starts picking up really fucking quick, and a lot of really plot heavy related stuff happens during this time, and then it continues on forward. More action and more fighting. The 7th Division members that we saw in the previous season actually decide to go ahead and join up. So we actually get to see them again, and it was really cool to see some of them, considering that we only got to see them very briefly, and it delves more into the characters and who they are, and they kind of sort of explain why they decided to go ahead and side with the Mob. It was mostly because of Reagan, because of what happened. If you don't know what happened, then I'm not going to tell you. It continues on more. We get to see a couple of really cool fucking moments where we see one guy who's a part of Claw, and he's basically invulnerable based off of his concentration. He can teleport instantly. He can read people's movements, and that guy's super cool. There's a guy with an umbrella who previously was a shut-in, but he's like super powerful for some fucking weird reason. It's probably just because that's the gag, right? The shut-in is the most powerful of all of them. Toichiro, I think, is the leader's name. I think that's what his name is. He's super basic, but I don't think he needs to be anything complicated. I think he just needs to be, a simplistic villain for the show, because he's not around very much often, and he pretty much is completely written out of the story after the 2nd season. And I think I mentioned this in the 1st season as well. I actually said I read up a little bit about what their plan was. And yeah, it's just world domination, and I think that's simple and fine enough, because the story isn't really centered around the villain. It's centered around how everyone has something that's special towards them, and with Mob in specific, he has psychic powers. Psychic powers make him special, but that's not the only thing that makes him special, and he shouldn't be relying on his psychic powers. He should be relying and admiring the people around him, and have the support group that he needs by having a whole bunch of people around him. And that's kind of like the whole message of the finale towards the final fight with Toichiro. Toichiro basically is at the point where he's an incredibly powerful Esper, and leads this powerful organization because he cut off ties from everyone, from his own son, from his wife, and just basically just did everything that he could in order to become incredibly powerful as he was. And you have Mob, who is basically just a complete contradiction to Toichiro's ideology, and that's basically the context and the message behind their fight towards like the final few episodes of the season. And I think that's really good. You know, I think it's a good message to have in a show that has these super incredible fucking fights that basically turn into fucking Dragon Ball fights at a certain point, where at a certain point we go from, you know, Mom just like interacting with spirits and, you know, doing whatever that he can, and then we have Dimple, who's like this little like shrimp thing, to fucking nuclear explosions going off, creating a giant broccoli tree. It takes a drastically different direction towards this, the last half of the season, but I think it's one where, because of the way that the writers wrote it into the story, and the mangaka wrote it into the story, especially when he was writing it originally, I think the way that it works within this context, I think it works really well. And ultimately, the second season leads into a direction that was very interesting, and it was very intriguing, and I really enjoyed watching this from beginning to end. And now we're getting a third season, and I don't know what they're going to do next. So I can only hope that they're going to do something interesting. I don't know what they're going to do. I'm actually at a point right now where I'm looking at this, and I don't know what they're going to do. Right? I don't know what's going to happen next with Mom and the characters that I've grown to know. I don't know what they're going to do, especially considering that the 7th Division, or the former 7th Division members, they're kind of just off doing their own thing. The umbrella guy that I was talking about, Mob was able to convince him that what he's doing is bad and he shouldn't be following along with the leader, and now he's actually joined along with Reagan and Mob in their business, which there was an episode centered around Reagan and his business where he started getting really popular and was being called out for being a scammer, which I thought was a funny episode. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know what's going to happen for the third season. It's coming out apparently soon. I don't know how soon, but it's coming out eventually, and I don't know what's gonna happen with the story. I don't know what direction they were going towards or where they're going towards. I just hope that it's interesting. I hope it's fun, and I hope it's hilarious. So that's all I really have to say. You know, I mean, like I said, most of the thoughts and opinions that I have about the second season kind of transfer over from the first season. It's just a couple of things kind of switch around, and I don't really know what else to say, because I think it kind of is self-explanatory. Appreciate the small things, right? Appreciate the people around you, and rely on the people around you whenever necessary, because you can't do everything on your own. And sometimes having people around you and people who support you and people who care about you is what truly gives you strength. And that's kind of the message that you should take away from this. And I kind of admire that, because a lot of, you know, shonen anime kind of have this message, but they don't really tell it in the simplistic way that Mob Psycho 100 does, in a way that's comprehensible and easy to understand. But regardless, that's pretty much all I have to say. I don't really know what else to really say about the second season. It was really fucking good. The action, like I said, towards the end started getting really fucking good. So, and that's pretty much why I don't really have much else to say about the second half of the season, because it all kind of bundles down to a whole bunch of fights, and it's kind of hard to explain fights in this aspect, because not all of the fights kind of have like a symbolic meaning behind why the fight and why they're doing it and why it's happening. Only a couple of them do. And the most important one between Mob and Toichiro was like the big important fight that had the biggest message for the audience to see and learn from, I guess. But anyways, that's pretty much all I have to say. I don't have anything else to add on top of the video, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap things up. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like. If you want to see more, be sure to subscribe. I'll see you guys next one. Have a fantastic day. I'm out. Peace.